So a quick question started out here with the group here. We've got 30 minutes, and we've got 5 people. So we've got a lot to go over, and if there's any questions, we're all available at the end of the session in the hallways. And first of all, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's good. We have a fantastic panel this morning to discuss where we're looking at right at the moment within leadership, within AI, what the impact of that is, production, 5G, whatever the evolutionary activity is that we need to really understand to be able to move forward. Immediately to my left is Simon Crownshaw, who's from Microsoft. You probably all know Simon. He's worldwide lead for media and entertainment, speaks on these subjects all the time. Mike Davies, the EVP of Technical and Field Operations for FoxSports. And anything within the sports arena, Mike knows where it's at. Renard Jenkins, who's the president of SMPTE, as well as he's also actively engaged with HPA down in Los Angeles. And last but certainly not least is Heather Mellish, who's with AWS, and she's the go-to person in taking things out into the market with AWS. One of the things that we really wanted to kind of address at the moment is, we're in a very interesting time. You're looking at on and on all the different phrases with AI and how it's going to be improving and how it's going to be impacting and how it's going to bring to light, some of the new areas that we're wanting to get involved with. But the bottom line of it is that AI has been around for some time. We're starting to get our hands around it. We're starting to implement it where it can be beneficial, especially in the production chain, and how we're going to really approach this. Now, when it comes to leadership, really, where does this come into play? How are we going to manage that when it comes to the executives that are engaged with any of the productions and any kind of the pipelines that are necessary, and how we're going to manage our teams, how we're going to look at that. What we're going to talk about today is a generation of ideas, where things really fall. And what I'd like to do is start out with the conversation, because we've only got 30 minutes, and I know that we can fill up an hour comfortably on this. So, let me just kick off right away with Mike. How do you see AI impacting architectures and media production that support innovation?
I have no idea. No idea at all, Allan.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Because, when it comes to artificial, that's probably the way it goes, right? So what are you finding right at the moment in live production?
Well, right now we're kind of seeing it on the edges, right? Like you said, AI has been around. If you squint, AI is there. You can pretty much throw a rock and hit AI. So, we're not out there, looking for artificial intelligence solutions. They're sort of coming to us organically, or they're growing in certain areas. But yeah, it's on the edges, Allan. It's right now it's, how do you make replays better? How can you inform, post-production decisions, not unlike the past panel was talking about. And, from a leadership perspective, it's just basically being open, right, to these types of things, because, everybody, you hear a lot about people fearing AI, but the fact is that, technology creates things. It doesn't necessarily destroy things.
Are you finding that AI is becoming kind of the new excuse to move things forward?
Yeah.
Like definitely, it's like,
just use AI. It's getting, it's getting a little bit cliche, right? Like, you can slap AI, a badge of AI on any product at this point, and it's pretty much required at this point to just put it, and I believe my toaster at home has an AI component to it, and still burns the damn toast. So I think that, it's becoming very much a cliche, and I think we're getting caught up with what we're saying is AI versus what it can actually do for us.
Yeah, and that's something that Microsoft, you've been looking at it, Simon, pretty intensely over the last while. There's certainly some drama at the end of the year with ChatGPT and a few others, but when it comes to media and entertainment, the effort that you're seeing worldwide at this time, where do you see it all netting out?
Well, first off, I'm probably not as funny as Mike, so I'll excuse you any humor. I think Mike said it best. I think it's still at the edges, for sure. I think it's very early. I love the way that he phrased it, which is you sprinkle anything with AI and it kind of gets funded these days, right? We got a lot of projects going on from that perspective. There are varying degrees of maturity in this space by far. And I'll even say that on the Microsoft side. We are going so fast that I don't think any of our teams can really keep up. And how we apply it is probably the most applicable piece here, right? The technology is there. It's been there. And it's now being democratized to a certain degree. But the teams that work in live sports, whatever else it might be, right, they're running 150 miles an hour. How do you find the time to implement the new AI components into those workflows, right, and have those conversations with your teams and figure out how to do it at scale? Right. Is really the challenge that we see, right? I mean, I like the way that Mike phrased it. The edges is right, because you want to find those easy and simple ways to apply it where you possibly can and to show the value, right? A lot of the conversations on the Microsoft side that we get into, right, is, well, Microsoft, would you please fund this for me, right? I probably get that at least twice a day. And sometimes, right, it's about figuring out for the folks in the audience, yeah, I could fund it for you, but are you going to use it in production? And is it going to have any real return on investment for you? How's it going to make your life different? Right. And that's a substantive conversation, right? Because I can pay for a prototype, but I need you to use it long term. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're finding, the kind of is it an enthusiasm or a panic that you're starting to?
No, there's a lot of enthusiasm for sure. I mean, I also come back to education, though, right? I mean, people understanding what an LLM is or a small language model, or how do they apply it? Is it your data, our data? What do you need to make it really run? There's a lot of foundational efforts that have to be done first before you can just start going and running with AI. Yeah.
I'm going to just kind of, excuse me, Renard, I'm going to go to Heather because you're working with the edge, and this is really right in the discussion point that we're talking about right now. What's your opinion on this? Because what are your specifics that you're looking at?
Well, I agree with both of what you all said as far as like sprinkle AI into every conversation. But really, what are our customers asking for? And what are we listening to our customers and working backwards from that? What are their applications that they're looking at? It can only, like you say, it's been around. It's really understanding. You can go into a customer conversation and they can say, so what are you doing with Gen AI? Or what are you doing with AI? It's a very sprinkle it everywhere. But it's really understanding what are your customers looking to do around scale, around delivery, around performance. And then working backwards from those conversations and understanding, okay, here are the different applications that we can insert into it and have a more tailored conversation. I think it's really easy to go into a customer conversation or just even a project conversation and saying, what are we doing with AI? And then we completely get derailed and we're all like, oh, we're all still learning. And it shouldn't be scary. I liked that question, is it instilling panic? And it shouldn't, because we're all in the technology business and we've all, if you think about just even delivering streaming content online, 25 years ago, that was blasphemous to think about. And here we are.
Well, 30 years ago, I started doing some AI stuff with University of Edinburgh. That's a component. I'm not even going to drill into the different technologies that were there, and also explanations that took place decades before. But when it comes down to this, the leadership that I'm hearing this is kind of all over the board. And this is one of the points that we're starting out with, was the leadership. And Renard, you're doing some things within SMPTE and within HPA that you're educating and developing this kind of direction within the organizations that are members of those groups.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to understand that, everything that's called AI is not AI. A lot of it has to do with machine learning, which has been around for quite some time. We've been doing machine learning and automation since the 60s. And a lot of people are confusing the two or conflating them, if you will. And by doing that, that instills the fear. Because then people start thinking that you're going to use this, it's going to actually deplenish, remove jobs and things like that. MIT just released a study this week that talks about the fact that it costs too much to replace human beings with AI right now. Now that scale may tip over time, but right now it isn't the wisest thing to do to just say, hey, we're going all in and we're going to do this. However, it is the wise thing to do to educate individuals about what AI is, what it's capable of doing today, how to understand how to get your people ready for what you're doing. That's what leadership really is preparing individuals for what's coming so that they can actually be a part of the process. That will help eliminate some of the fear. That's what we're doing at SMPTE. That's what we're doing at HPA. We're educating people and making sure that they understand what this technology is, how they can get engaged, and what it is that they have to offer to this, because every single aspect of our lives is being touched by, something that they're calling AI.
Yeah, but that's been going on for
COVID.
some time.
Oh, it's been going
our
on forever.
phones, everything that's going on with them.
Can I add something to that? Because I think Renard
By
is
all
right.
means.
I think I spend a lot of time with lots of different broadcasters and movie studios all over the place, right? And I would say, to Renard's point, most of the studios are still trying to figure out their hiring process to figure out who they're going to hire to even run their AI components, right? They don't have the teams that have understood it. There's not enough learning or education to figure out how it gets applied. And so the leadership that Renard is talking about is fundamentally critical, because otherwise we're going to make the wrong investments. We're not going to figure out where we need to put it, how we need to learn to work with it, where does it really get applied, or where do I not need to use it, right? I think so what I'm seeing in the market, Allan, right, is the ability for human resources to some degree to get involved and figure out what the future of an organization needs to look like.
Yeah, but AI is going to replace human resources.
I think there's some exploring
There's a number of
too.
applications out there right now that are meant to replace human resources.
Right?
And there's exploring too and seeing where we can insert AI and where we can insert our employees. And I think we had this conversation a couple months ago. We just realized that we're going to go on tour talking about this. But, how can we augment? How can we change? How can our jobs change? And when that panic that says, all of our jobs are going to go away because of AI, that's not the case. It's,
not at all.
How are they going to be enhanced, and how are we going to educate ourselves for that like next inflection point?
And I think that's the most important thing, right? Futurist named Byron Reese said that technology over the millennia has never actually destroyed things.
No,
I mean,
never.
until Skynet comes around and actually does destroy things, which is a distinct possibility.
There's some
But technology has
opinions.
never destroyed things. It's always created things, and that includes jobs.
Yep.
And that those jobs over time, and he says every 50 years, end up moving to category adjacent positions, right, as they learn to deal with the technology. So as leaders, getting those people prepared, and I think this is what we're all saying.
Yeah.
And of course, it's hard to know, right? Because AI, I mean, there's two things about AI. Number one, everybody's talking about it, certainly we are. And number two, it defies specifics. And that's the frustrating bit.
Yeah.
I would agree. One of the things, like, I'm the president of 2G Digital Post down in Burbank. And of that, within the production environment that we're dealing in now, we do localization, versioning of content, but a lot of different types of subtitling and dubbing. And that, now with AI, it comes back as, are you AI? Well, yeah, automated intelligence and ML, that all works there. We can do 28 languages in 7 seconds. All of that kind of, when it comes to subtitling, is critically important as you move forward. But what we're starting to discover and witness is, now that the actors' strike is over, the productions are in place, the directors and the producers are actually asking for new ways of looking at dailies. And the dailies with the AI platform, they're able to say 3 or 4 or 5 different versions of a particular day's shot of what they're going to be putting together from it. What used to be just kind of like rough cuts. Now it's within moments, they're able to see how things are moving along, so it helps them with their staging for the next day. That is helpful, to your point. Those are tools that we're starting to implement when it comes into this functionality. And who is actually driving it is the creative forces that are saying, how can we find new solutions to things? When it comes into some stalling is when it gets into the editing components, because that is really critical, because that comes down to actually formalizing what is going to be moved forward in 3-4 weeks as things come together. But one of the elements that we're looking at is the efficiencies of bringing all of this to bear, the leadership, the executives, the pulling together the teams and how it moves forward. Is this the new, I'm just going to throw it out there, is this the new buzzword for 5G and cloud? Is this just another variable to that, Heather?
I don't think so. I think it's an enhancement. I think it's helping our customers, and it's helping our services scale, reach, monetize, localize with speed. I think it's an enhancement. It's something that we can go to customers and say, and as I spoke about earlier, working backwards from what's their solution. Oh, I'm looking to localize my content. I'm looking to automate some function of my media supply chain. I mean, I think it's really an enhancement when we look at it. But when we label it, is it a replacement to 5G or a replacement to the cloud? I think it's in addition.
Well,
in my opinion.
You just mentioned media supply chain intelligence, MSI. I mean, I've not heard of that. I'm just throwing it out there. But that is definitely something that is helpful when it comes to the creative process all the way to delivery of the content to the audience. I imagine within your AI teams, because I know that, Mike, you have different people that are working with AI right now and trying to make your live productions faster. And that's pretty hard to even imagine because your teams are so superb at developing that. Where are you using it?
Post, for the most part. Dustin Myers is our leader of our post group, and
Right.
We've transferred our media asset management system to Google platform, and gone and dumped all the untold hours of library material into that system, and like anything, we're just learning how to use that at this point to understand like some of the things that Philippe was talking about in the previous panel, how post can very much be sped up by, wading through these, myriad of hours to find just the right shot. And I think that the benefit certainly is going to be time savings, but I think for an enhancement, you're going to start unearthing things that, you're not going to go like right for the highlight everybody's seen. You may find some other things some diamonds in the rough that might actually make it into pieces that, hadn't previously made it. So we've got the keys to the car. We just haven't necessarily learned how to drive it yet, but that, in terms of something that I always hang my hat on, say, man, that is AI for sure. That is definitely something that we're doing. And I think post-production, especially wading through, a huge library, lots of data, things can be refined over time. That's where we're using it right now.
Yeah, you're describing what used to be known as the AD. But putting that together, but what you're finding is that workflow is starting to be able to be called out. So as you're shooting, you're finding that the AI that you're using, the machine learning that you're using, is starting to learn what is the benefit or what is a better shot. How are they uncovering those kinds of content?
You know what it is? It's more like, look, we've been logging video forever, and you could say, okay, so-and-so, scored a touch, Brady throws to Gronk, touchdown. But now you can go and have the AI look at perceived emotions and crowd reaction and different things, so that, if you're looking more for a visual storytelling, like something more cinematic, something more dramatic, now the AI potentially can help you with finding those types of things instead of just, X's and O's, right?
Yeah, you can pay attention to what Adobe is doing right now with their Camera Cloud. What Adobe is doing is they've created a way for you to actually pull highlights almost instantly. So you can be shooting the entire game, but in the background, it's generating highlights for you. So that now gives your director and it gives your associate director the opportunity to take a look to see what's being created here over in this cache that they can actually bring back into the actual live production itself. And it's training and learning over time what's being accepted and what is actually more akin to what we do as human beings.
Yeah, he's just starting to think like an editor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and help you as your assistant editor to go through, and then, the next step is that, well, it's going to make that shot look better for you, and it's going to reframe it for you, and it's going to take the shakeout for you, and,
Prove user engagement.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to start to learn what is being received and what is not. What is, those edits, like, for your end users that are watching it. Is that engaging or does it not?
It is, and you were describing something that's, once it's integrated into the overall platform, it's learning the processes, learning these kinds of reactions. And, and all we're talking about here is Azure has been doing some of that work in the background activities for many years, Simon. I mean, this is something that's not new. There's an intelligence component that you've been working with the different broadcasters around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just to kind of attached to what everything we just said, right? I would say that, look, I mean, for me, when I look at it, there's definitely a generational and moment here, right, in terms of what's going on, right, between the different AI services that are available, for sure. Is it going to transform our industry? Yes. Let's also address the elephant in the room. Are we really bad at adopting new technology in this industry? Yes, we really are, right? We're really slow, right? It takes forever. But we do things first, and then other industries go a little faster than we do. It's okay. But is data going to be the foundation of this piece? Yes, it is, right? And is cloud absolutely going to be needed to provide the scale that this is going to need to be done at? Yes, it is. And I would say that on the Azure side, yes, there's a lot of things we do in M&E that nobody really knows that we do, between cognitive services and translating localized voices in real time, and the active replays that go on in terms of media asset management and all these kind of components. But it kind of always goes back to addressing some of the problems that we get from customers. I want to do things faster, at better quality, right? I need to have more control over my environment. Why did I do that, right? So I think that's also one of the pieces I wanted to address, right, from a media standpoint. What I see going forward is organizations like Mike at Fox, for example, wanted to take more control over how they do certain things, right? It's their architecture, right? It's their process, right? And we love in media to have our own process, not the same process everybody else. It's got to be our own. And I think that's where I see the AI components from an Azure perspective, figuring out you can take a generic process, but you're going to customize it to do it certain ways you want to do it. Yeah. Are you going to store assets the way you want to store them? You want to use AI to update those assets when you need them. You're going to figure out how to use AI to digitize certain content or not for engagement. Which ones are going to work better? Which ones are not? Because there's only so many people we have on our teams, right? So there are some real efficiency gains that we can make through that process.
Yeah, you're explaining human management versus actually artificial intelligence management. And that, as soon as you start moving over to AI, that becomes a little fearful for all management groups and where things are in today's world. So when it comes back to leadership and making those decisions about your teams and who and where and how, we're going to be looking for a different kind of background in making those decisions about those leaderships. Heather, you're about ready to jump.
Yeah, there's a little bit of fear, I think, in the industry. If we look at media, if we look at broadcast, Simon said it best, there's a control. A lot of people like to control their infrastructure, control their workflows, and when you're inserting AI into that, people feel like they're losing control. So I think it's up to us as an industry to educate ourselves, to educate our employees, to educate our customers. That's only going to enhance, it's only going to help us all learn. But there's that slow-moving education curve that we'll all get there. But we're at an inflection point. But it shouldn't be that we're losing control point.
No, we shouldn't be thinking of it as losing control. What we're doing over at I2A2 is we're actually looking at it from a neurology standpoint. Changing the minds of how people operate, that's a huge, huge deal that you have to get into. So our head of neurotech, Brian Wellner, he's really looking at how do people respond to the changes, and then how do we actually use this technology to help them bridge that gap that they see. The fear comes in with individuals, once again, not understanding that the human connection and the interaction between the human and the computer has to remain in place in order for AI to actually be successful. When it gets down to it, we're talking about statistics and probability. That's how we build all of these tools. Okay? It's math, people. And those of you who are English majors, you still have a play in this as well. Because
they totally do, right?
The prompt engineer is an English major's playground. So the mathematicians have their place to build the platform. The English majors have their place to use the platform. And the rest of us that are able to talk with our left and our right side of our brain, which is actually most of us in this room, we now have the opportunity to take advantage of all of this once you understand how to use the tools and where you actually play. That's what leaders should be trying to get across to their staffs right now. But most of them are fearful.
I think Simon, you had an interesting thought there, is that, utilizing AI for customization, because you're talking about tools, right? And typically speaking, the old way was, okay, one size fits all, right? Okay, we're making this tool, it's going to be good for all these companies, and off you go. Yeah. Now, with these types of technologies, as you said, companies like to do things their own way. You can utilize these technologies to make those types of iterative changes that are bespoke to these companies in the same way.
Yeah.
That's sort of where you were getting at?
Exactly. So what I'm seeing is an example of where typically, right, I was at Disney, for example, and typically a lot of what we would do would be like just API integrations. We'd throw the stuff over the wall and disappear.
Sure.
But now the ability to have a bit more of a technology control of what I do and how I do it is now really critical, right? Because now I've democratized access to technology that required like Python developers and everybody else, right? I don't need that anymore.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So I can take more control over what I do. So that's kind of what we're seeing, right? Now that is a mind step shift, right, in terms of where they want to go. It's a generational shift in terms of what we've ever done before. But look at what the industry's gone through in the last 10 to 15 years, right? It's crazy. I mean, I classify the last 5 years as a win at all costs. Right?
Win at all costs.
Yeah. And that's not sustainable, right? $2 billion a year on content in 2019 to $23 billion a year in content 4 years later.
Yeah.
Right? Insane, right? So I think it's an interesting, just a challenge is to kind of increase the technology capacity inside broadcasters and studios and others where they can do more.
You brought up something, all of us have brought up something, and that is, where's the foundational component of what AI is looking to be? And in reality, it's really the generation of ideas. And it's how that generation of ideas come into play that we, as the executives involved in all of these decisions, manage those ideas. It's the acceleration of those ideas that we pull into play. And that is where we're at from a foundational standpoint today. We're in this period of time that, as we've talked about when we had our call, is like this is a very interesting period. It's not one to be fearful of. It's really to be explorative and understanding how you manage the insights, the capabilities that are served up to you when it comes to AI. And that's an element that we all kind of overlook from time to time, is what are those insights to help us make decisions? Mike, in your world, it's fairly instantaneous that you have to make these decisions very quickly. From an education, Renard, you're looking at how you help people understand that process. Heather, on the edge, you're dealing with so many different kinds of components that are out there to help others get the benefit of what your platform is. And Simon, the levels of your capabilities from your groups and teams to be able to participate and bring value to the different areas that we're all looking at right now. It's how to manage insights, how we develop that kind of capability. And when it comes down to that, are we going to start seeing this take over most of the production chain? Because at this time, it's not, and it's years away from that. But there's a fear that exists today.
Well, I'll start with live, and the answer is no, it won't. I think that the easy thing to, when we look at AI and people pitch us on AI things like, well, our technology can produce a game for you, can cut cameras for you, those types of things. Well, we don't want you to do that. There's a storytelling element that now there's a business for that in high school football, different things, 100%. But no, I don't believe that it will take over the entire supply chain, and instead it will just be enhanced by it.
And I would agree. I think across supply chain, broadcasters, studios, others, I see it as a smarter way to do certain pieces of work with humans at the center. And I think as we think about not just the technology and the way that people create content, I think as the technology kind of fades into the background, we put the fans first, right, and understand how they're going to experience that content. I think it's going to be key, but I don't see it replacing, maybe just augmenting, and what do we say at Microsoft, being a co-pilot. I think that's really how we would leverage it and use it. But certainly it's hand in hand to make things smarter.
Yeah. And I think it's also how can we get more insights into it? How can we build insights? How can we look at more intelligence around it? And then just holistically, I look at AI in general, or this whole conversation. How can we educate? How can we educate and keep up with the demand around it?
Yeah, and I would simply say that just because you can doesn't mean that you should. All right,
Yeah,
we've all heard that before,
Yeah.
because we can do a lot of things, but it's really going to be up to those of us who are building these pipelines, who are continuing to keep these pipelines going, understanding what's actually needed. And what are the creatives actually asking for? Building tools in a lab or in the background and then presenting them to a creative is just a 100% way to head towards failure. But building them with the artists, with the creatives, and asking them, what is it that you really are trying to get to? That's going to be the key to how we actually integrate this in.
And that's the new career opportunity, in my opinion. What
That's one of them.
And that's with everybody that's in the audience right now. And I think, Simon, you really encapsulated with being the co-pilot. You know, those of us that understand a little bit of what and how this is put together, we need to be in that position to help others understand exactly what that next step is and the capabilities and the improvements that could be brought. You know, we're at time right now. I know that we're tight on this, and so... One speed dating question. Okay, what is the one that would be going is like, what do you think that I thought I just answered it, but for career opportunities, what would be that one career point that we would look at today? Simon, I'll just start with you on the left.
I mean, for me, I think there is no doubt that understanding how AI is built, used, where it's deployed is going to be fundamentally critical across all technical architecture. There is significant understanding that is still not there across many organizations, and many organizations need those skill sets and resources.
He's like career opportunities? I don't know, baking, all right?
Yeah. Baking? Is mixing dough?
Need to go right now. I would say data engineering is a key point right now.
Data engineering?
Data engineering, yeah.
Intelligence data?
Well, you would hope that individuals know how to use data intelligently. But yeah, the idea of the data engineer being a key component to your creative process, that's going to actually help you understand what it is that you have the options to do.
Yeah, that interesting enough is in the crew sheets right now.
Yeah,
as far as the people that are being pulled in on sheets right at the moment.
Exactly.
There is a data scientist.
Yeah.
Heather?
I concur with Simon. I think just on the developing side, building those foundational models and building those applications, we need to have people who are immersed in that and can help educate us. So that would be.
Oh, well, I forgot to say, English majors are still definitely welcome for prompt engineering. We should.
Yeah.
And I'm a finance major, so I got the
I've
banking.
been married to an English major, so she's telling me how important she is every day.
On the Microsoft side, we've hired more English majors for computer science roles than ever recently, right? It's amazing.
This is great. Simon, Mike, Renard, Heather, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, a round of applause for everyone.